Hello, back again. I want to take a look at 5 Supreme Court cases that every teen should know. Some of this might sound familiar. Let me just read this over first. Keep my eye on the clock. Try to keep this under 10 minutes. The nation's highest court makes decisions that affect all Americans, including teenagers, inside and outside of school. Is it a crime to burn an American flag? Do we have the right to own guns? Is the death penalty a proper way to punish people convicted of horrible crimes? If an issue gets Americans arguing, there's a good chance the Supreme Court of the United States will eventually end up weighing in. The 9 justices on the nation's highest court have the final word on whether particular laws and the rulings of other courts are constitutional or fit the principles outlined by the founders in the U.S. Constitution. Judicial review, remember? The court is part of the judicial branch of the federal government. It shares power with the executive branch, the legislative branch, which we've already been over. The president appoints the justices who sit on the Supreme Court, but they must be approved by the Senate. Remember the checks and balances. Because the Supreme Court is so powerful and because the justices serve for life, and we know why, remember, the 8th grade question is, how long do justices serve for life? But I want you to know much more. They serve for life to make the hard decisions. So they don't have to be weighed by, or affected, or influenced by public opinion. Justices serve for life. Nominations to the court by presidents of both parties in recent years have led to big confrontation battles in the Senate. Like school, the Supreme Court begins a new term each year on the first Monday in October. The court gets 10,000 requests to hear cases each year, but chooses only about 75. Because the court's decisions affect the lives of all Americans on a daily basis, they are studied by judges, lawyers, and the media across the country. In this article, we look at 5 landmark rulings that really affect you guys. The first one, Kent versus United States, 1966, juvenile crime. The bottom line, teens can be tried and sentenced as adults. The background, a boy named Morris Kent, 16, was charged with burglary, robbery, and rape in Washington, D.C. His lawyer wanted the case handled in a juvenile court where the sentences might be lighter. But the judge sent Morris to adult court, where he was convicted and sentenced to 30 to 90 years in prison. Morris appealed. The ruling against Morris said that the court said that a minor can be tried and sentenced as an adult. But a judge can take a defendant's age into account. So really, long story short, you're under age of 18, you do something horrible, you can be tried as an adult. But the Supreme Court has abolished the death penalty for minors, saying that it violates the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual. And let's see, last year, and this is a pretty recent article, this is September of 2011, last year the court barred life imprisonment for minors, except in cases of homicide. So that one's a pretty big one. Alright, number 2, Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, 1969. I talked about this when we read the Chapter 2, You in School, Tinker. This is freedom of speech in school. The bottom line, you may express yourself in school, up to a point. You do have that First Amendment right, freedom of speech, up to a point. In 1965, John and Mary Beth Tinker wore black armbands to school in Des Moines, Iowa to protest the Vietnam War. After they were suspended for doing so, the students sued the school district, claiming that it had violated the First Amendment right. The ruling, the court ruled in favor of the students. It said the students and teachers have a right to free speech at school as long as it doesn't interfere with classwork, activities, or other people's rights. In other words, First Amendment rights must be balanced with the school's need to keep order. So you do have a First Amendment right, but it's not across the board, up to a point. The impact, the Supreme Court has since relied on Tinker when setting limits on free speech in school. Lower courts have also followed Tinker, allowing nose rings and dyed hair in school, but they did one ruling, but not a Confederate flag t-shirt. New Jersey versus TLO, privacy rights. This is also one that was in your You in School. The bottom line, schools can search your belongings. After TLO, Terry, a freshman at Piscataway High School in New Jersey was caught smoking. School officials searched her purse and found marijuana. She was convicted of possession but appealed, claiming that the search violated her Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. Remember Fourth Amendment? Where the police, we have a search warrant. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the school. It said that a student's expectation of privacy at school had to be balanced with the school's need to maintain a safe learning environment. The impact is basically my story. I had to maintain a safe learning environment. I had a student shooting rubber bands, had him in the hall, took the rubber bands, he made a move for his other pocket. I had a reasonable suspicion. I reached in, didn't pull out rubber bands though. A whole lot of other stuff. And actually, the student in question here did kind of complain, I don't know how far it went, I don't know, it was a long time ago, but did kind of complain that I did violate that student's Fourth Amendment rights. I didn't put it so eloquently, they had no idea about Fourth Amendment, but they were saying, oh, Mr. Wren didn't have a right to reach in his pocket. Oh yeah, I did, because I came back and said I had reasonable suspicion, and I'd do it again. I had no idea what he was hiding. So, Hazelwood School District versus Colmer, student journalism and the First Amendment. Here's another one with the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Some students at a Hazelwood East High School in St. Louis worked on their school paper. The principal refused to let the paper be published with articles about teenage pregnancy and divorce, and the girls sued, claiming the First Amendment right. They lost. The Supreme Court ruled against the girls. A school newspaper isn't a public forum for freedom of speech. It is, they ruled an educational experience for the students. So schools may censor newspapers as well as plays, yearbooks, and graduation speeches. So it's yes, you have a lot of rights. Your First Amendment, 5 freedoms, but to an extent when you get into a public school. Then Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association, video games and minors. The First Amendment protects violent video games. The background, California passed a law banning the sale and rental of violent video games to anyone under 18. An entertainment group sued, saying it was against their First Amendment rights. The ruling against California, meaning the court said that because violent video games are not obscene, they can't be censored. Video games communicate ideas, even social messages. The decision had nothing, the decision said, noting that young people see violent images even in books and on many school reading lists. So one judge, Clarence Thomas, did disagree with that. He thought it was okay for California to ban the sale of videos to under 18, but just one dissenting decision doesn't stop the whole thing. So the decision probably rules out attempts to censor violence in other media like movies and rap music. So there you have it. Some of these are pretty important. I love the tinker with your freedom of speech, your freedom of symbolic speech, as long as something doesn't violate or disrupt the learning environment. Your Fourth Amendment right, to an extent, with reasonable suspicion, we can take a look at what you have. So think about that.